Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. We hope you enjoyed the high tea. And to those of our guests here from the UK, we know it's traditionally served in the afternoon, but we just couldn't help ourselves. We hope you enjoyed. I first want to thank Breaking Ground for hosting us here today at the Prince George Ballroom in this beautiful space. This building is dear to my heart because, as some of you may not know, this is actually one of the largest supportive housing residences in the country. So as people are having their weddings here and fancy events and think tanks having panels to talk about affordable housing, there's hundreds of formerly homeless people who make their homes upstairs right in the heart of the middle of New York City. My name is Jessica Katz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Citizens Housing and Planning Council. CHPC's mission since 1937 is to develop and advance practical public policies that support the housing stock of the city by better understanding New York's most pressing housing and neighborhood needs. Today, we are doing research on how to make basement apartments safer and more habitable, how shared housing can help meet housing needs in New York City, and what charter reform measures can best balance local and citywide housing needs. We share knowledge about housing needs and policy solutions through innovative ways. In addition to the typical reports and statistics, we have created 2 award-winning video games, and we've even put on a museum exhibition that tells the story of how our housing stock is not nearly as diverse as we are. In the past few years, we have continued to put forth bold ideas and solutions to support the public housing stock of the city, and we hope to share a few of them with you today. In 2018, CHPC published New Partners in Public Housing, an evaluation of NYCHA's Triborough project that compared buildings involved with the Triborough public-private partnership with a control group of buildings that remained entirely in NYCHA ownership and management. Through data analysis and a tenant survey, we heard from hundreds of residents about their impressions of the transfer to public-private partnerships. The results were entirely unsurprising. When $80 million is spent to renovate a development, when tenants get new kitchens and new bathrooms and new systems, they are happier. It doesn't get simpler than that. This year, to help support new resources for NYCHA, CHPC worked on data analysis about a tax abatement that co-op and condo owners receive. Working in partnership with the New York Housing Conference and others, we shared data about how the tax abatement could be reformed and the savings used to help NYCHA residents. Bills have been introduced into the Senate and the Assembly, and negotiations are underway as we speak. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Irina Listovskaya, Product Director at The Collective, who generously supported our event this morning. We are so happy that The Collective are here to be our sponsor. The Collective are a co-housing provider based in London, now starting to develop in New York City. Irina?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, and we're very excited to be supporting Citizen Housing and Planning Council with this event today. The Collective has been working really hard to better understand and help address some of the critical global housing issues. Our mission is to build and activate spaces that foster human connection and enable people to live more fulfilled lives. My journey with the Collective began 6 years ago, and since then we've moved from delivering modest flat shares in North London to opening the world's largest co-housing building, also based in London, and now securing a development pipeline of over 7,000 units. We initially started developing our product as a direct response to housing issues with issues with housing affordability, availability, and quality. But now we're also looking to address the issue which is much closer to my heart, which is loneliness, which is where kind of our model for shared housing really comes from. Throughout our journey, we've invested heavily in really understanding the needs of our customers and are now working together with policymakers across the world to share this information and help impact policy. I think we can say that in the UK now progress is definitely being made, and this is mainly due to a collaboration between public and private sector. as well as an increased trust between providers and customers as we begin to explore new and innovative ways of tackling the problem of affordability. However, there's, as always, a lot more work to be done, and I think more partnerships between private and public sector would definitely help, as well as, us learning to trust each other, so that's public and private sector, and innovate together. Since our expansion to the US over the last year, we have been working really hard to translate some of our insights and operational experience to help meet housing needs here in the US, as well as work to help impact some of the public policy across the country. I have been very fortunate to work across geographies and can, from first-hand experience, say that actually looking at different models and cross-pollinating across different geographies is very important. And the event, like today's event, therefore is close to my heart and I think is a great step forward. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from the panel.
Thank you, Irina, for your comments and your generous support of today's tea and finger sandwiches. So we're here today to learn about how public housing was transformed in the UK. Given the past work that we've done about public housing, CHPC wanted to contribute more, learn from who has been here before, and help policymakers find a positive way forward out of the stalemate we are currently in, because I think we all agree that something has got to change. There's no lack of finger pointing, but no big vision to move forward either. London is a good example for New Yorkers to learn from. They had even more public housing than we do, and it was in even worse condition. In 1980, there were more than 700,000 units of public housing compared to New York's 170,000. 30% of Londoners lived in public housing, and most of it failed to meet a decent home standard. But despite this, they found a way to move forward, and we hope to learn as much as we can today about the tools that made such a change possible. In the UK, there are multiple options. Some developments brought in new management, some tenants exercised a right to buy. Public-private partnerships were formed either to renovate the projects, and in some cases, when necessary, entire developments were demolished in phases with tenants given the right to return, and entirely new neighborhoods were created out of once were superblocks of badly maintained public housing. These were radical transformations, and they were only possible because three conditions were met. First was a broad consensus was clear that something had to change and that government resources would be insufficient to solve the problem. The financial resources and expertise of the affordable housing industry was brought to bear, but it was balanced with the expertise and resources of the tenants themselves. So I think in New York, we find ourselves at the precipice of number one. For number two, we clearly have a robust, talented, and diverse affordable housing industry who's eager to help. For number three, the visits from the tenants that we've done this week with our visitors from London, it's so clear that we have an engaged and informed resident population at NYCHA, many of whom are here today. And if only we would provide a meaningful pathway for you to participate in decision-making and not just discussion. Thank you. Some of the history you're healed today is very difficult to picture happening here in New York. Tenants crafting an RFP to select a new manager for their development, developers signing an MOU with tenants to agree to terms of a development agreement, tenants voting on a plan to demolish existing public housing and replace it with twice as many units, including market rate housing that will pay for the new public housing to be created in its place. We're here today to learn from the people who were and still are a part of the public housing transformation in London, and our hope is that you walk away from this conversation knowing that change is possible in New York City. We're not pretending that everything is shiny and perfect in London and England, far from it, but it's about pulling out some key concepts that we could learn from a place that has been wrestling with a similar issue, but more intensely for almost 40 years. Positive change is possible. That's the message we want you to hold on to. Bold new directions for public housing have been done in many places. Today, you'll hear from an affordable housing owner and operator who will share about the different ways they have played a part in these improvements. We're also joined by a tenant organizer and a public housing resident who will each give us their insight on how they continue to ensure that the changes are responsive to resident needs. After we hear the presentations, we'll have some time for Q&A. So you all have index cards on your seats. So throughout the event, please hold up your index card and someone will come grab it from you. Throughout this week, our guests from the UK have met with City Hall, with NYCHA staff, a city council member, tenant groups, and toured several NYCHA buildings. Our hope for this event and our meetings throughout this week was to show that change is possible, that tenants can and should be the center of the decision-making process, and that by using a menu of different options and the resources and expertise of the affordable housing industry that is thriving here in New York, we can save our public housing stock.